First things first, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Okay, good to hear.
Yeah.
What I want to start with is you worked as a sound engineer. You still work as a sound engineer.
Oh yes.
Going back to the early days, how has this helped you become a better musician?
I have to say, be able to record yourself and listen back, and practicing. A lot of guitar players sit with a metronome, playing. I always been since a teenage. When I was a teenager,
Okay.
I rehearsed back home in my parents' basement. And I got this portable studio, and my brother was a drummer and is a drummer still. And normally I said to him if he could play some beats, and I could play to the beats instead of just practicing to a metronome. And I think that made, suddenly I started to hear, oh, this is how drums could sound, and guitar and bass and everything. So I think it helped me a lot just to develop as a guitar player, because suddenly instead of just hearing yourself practicing from the amp with a metronome, I could record myself together with the drums and put on bass and everything. So I think that made me a very good... I was listening to myself from a different point of view instead of just listening to, oh, this scale sounds good. I could just put it into the real life.
Do you remember early on, why did you start recording yourself? Do you remember why?
It was actually my brother brought home a portable studio.
Okay.
And I was also working at a music store at the time, and the portable 4-channel studios started to sell, and was like, wow, I can record twin guitars by myself.
Right.
And that was it was luxury back then, because not everyone had a portable studio, and I think that helped me a lot to understand the way of achieving a good sound, if I heard a lick from Richie Blackmore, Michael Schenker, whatever, I could put it onto a track and record it and listen if it worked in the real situation.
Do you still have those recordings?
Not all of them, because I couldn't afford to buy that many cassettes. So some of it is gone, but I think I have still all the actual demos we did. I think I have everything left.
Have you ever? When was the last time you listened to it?
Oh, it wasn't that long actually. It was this spring.
Okay.
Because I found in my dad's car, I found a cassette, and I was like, oh, this is the first demo, and I put it in, and I was driving his car. And it ended up, I was listening through all the songs again, and I was like, yeah, still rocks.
Can you hear what you were trying to do?
I have to say, the similarity of the sound, it's in your fingers.
Okay.
It was there already.
Okay.
Even if the technical side wasn't that developed at the time. But I have to say, it sounds more or less the same.
Okay.
It's interesting, I didn't reflect on that before. And after that, when I was listening to the solos and how I play the rhythms and everything, I started to listen through like decades. So it was the 80s and then the 90s, and how I developed as a guitar player. And I have to say, if I listen to what happened early 90s, it's not that big difference today, like 26 years later.
Okay.
Even if nowadays I'm more relaxed and secure what I'm doing. So.
Why do you think that is? That since the 90s, your playing style is playing guitar a conscious thing for you, or is it more about feeling?
I think I grow up with a lot of folk music, because we have a big folk music tradition, and at the time when I was really young, we had this music school. You more or less had to choose an instrument in 3rd grade.
Okay.
And I started, of course, at that time, guitar was out of the question, because everyone wanted to play piano and guitar. So the quote was filled, sort of. So I chose the trumpet, because I like the trumpet, and that started. And I was more or less listening to melodies every time, and I think them melodies is still there. I don't need to, I don't think that much when I'm playing. Now, more or less after a couple of years, you know, when you get older, it gets a little bit. You need to play more. You need to play a little bit every day. Otherwise, you lose it so fast. For like, since early 90s, I didn't need to rehearse that much and practice because it was there all the time. That has changed, and now I have, you know, I have to play at least, you know, an hour a day.
Okay.
And I don't sit down for an hour, but I take the guitar in the morning a little bit, and then I take it after lunch, and then I work in the studio and I play something. So it ends up an hour a day, more or less.
And you mentioned, well, you mentioned your brother was a drummer, is
Yes.
a drummer. And then there was a big folk tradition when you grew up. So what got you into heavier music?
Because I was like 15, that was 83, I was 15, and the boom when it came to like melodic metal, not metal, but melodic hard rock,
Sure.
that you know, it exploded in the early 80s, and I was over, actually, when it started, my brother brought home Breaker with Accept,
Okay.
and that was like the first like real metal thing. I was like, wow, how can they make, how, it's impossible to get it to sound like this. And that made me both think, how can I do it as a guitar player, and how can I achieve it as a sound engineer? And that was the start. And then from there on, I loved the twin guitar setup. So I listened, you know, Judas Priest. I listened to Thin Lizzy a lot because that was a lot of melodies, and they had a folk tone from Ireland.
Sure.
Yeah, and so and the Irish folk tones are quite similar. They're a little bit more pentatonic than the Swedish ones. The Swedish are more harmonic minor and minor scales and stuff like that. So it's that mix became, and of course a lot of guitar players like Richie Blackmore, Gary Moore. My favorite, I have to say still, it's like the first one that really kicked my ass was of course Richie Blackmore. I heard live in Japan.
Okay.
And then Gary Moore came in very early, Michael Schenker came in very early, and Aldo Meola, and you know, started listening to Aldo Meola, and then Yngwie appeared in Stockholm, and the first time I saw him I didn't understand anything because he was so breaking through a new thing in.
Sure.
And he was one of the first. Of course, we had other guitar players that was playing fast. Aldo Meola, he was amazing. But yeah, so that I think made a big impression on my musical career, sort of.
So at that point, did you know you wanted to become a guitarist, or did you hover more towards being a producer, maybe? Or?
No, I think it was the breaking period when it came, because I was playing the trumpet, and then I started to listen to guitar players, jazz and stuff, and I liked the fast playing, and of course both of my parents are. My father was an opera singer, and my mother played. She was a school teacher, but she played a lot of piano and guitar, so it was guitars at home. And then I started to like, this sounds great on the trumpet, but if I play it on the guitar, and that was so hard, so I started to practice, and then it was like, the guitar gets you girls, not the trumpet in the same way. So, and you saw at that time all the videos in the early 80s, it was like, whoa, it's...
This is interesting because you say your father was an opera singer, and your mother was into classical.
But she was a teacher, but she played a lot of music. They had to play piano and guitar back then in the 60s. So
what did they think of all those names you've just mentioned, Yngwie Malmsteen? Well, what did they think of the type of music you were starting to make?
I think for first time, because we started rehearsing in a daycare center close to where my parents lived. We could borrow a room there, so we rehearsed. But then they just decided that, you can't do it anymore. And then we moved into my parents' garage. And my father came down and said, it's just noise, I don't understand it, because he was more classical guy. But then, of course, I didn't have a driving license, and my bandmates at the time didn't have a driving license, and it ended up my father driving us to all the gigs we were doing. And after a while, he saw he was also driving my brother to all the gigs. And my brother at the time was in a band that was in competitions with Yngwie Malmsteen's Old Rising Force and stuff like that. So he saw Yngwie Malmsteen before I even I knew of him. I saw him in music stores and stuff, but he saw the shows that I couldn't go to because that was like clubs in Stockholm. I was too young. I was first time 12 or 13.
This is just very interesting because I can't remember which song it was on Built to Last, but there was a bit where I thought this has a classical feel, a solo that had a classical feel.
Yeah.
So did kind of the music that you grew up with, did that have an influence now?
Yeah, because that was a big reason, you know, when I got asked to play in Hammerfall, because it's all the Hammerfall sound and the Hammerfall melodies has the same, because Joachim is from up north where that folk tradition comes from. So he has the melody in him also. And, you know, to put in the guitars, you know, solos and stuff, for me was very easy because I could just go, you know, from my heart what I like to play. And they were like, it sounds great.
Sure.
And that's on the No Sacrifice, No Victory, my first album with Hammerfall. They said, you have to present yourself with an instrumental song. And that was something for the ages. And that's very, very melodic. And that comes, it's so many folk tradition melodies in that one, you know, that I just not borrow it, but, you know, borrow it from my own mind. It's like, I was digging deep and I was like, oh, this is beautiful, this is beautiful. It maybe relates to whatever small village where that type of melody comes from.
Was it intimidating when they asked you to do that?
No, I was honored. Okay. And the thing is, they knew me before that I played with so many bands, and I played with the guys from Yngwie, with Jeff Scott Soto and Marcel Jacob in Talisman for almost 8 years. Sure. And so they knew my playing, but when they asked me, I was like, wow. Of course, it became a little bit stressful. I'm gonna write a song on the first Hammerfall album. I was honored, really honored.